Do you even hear yourself, Dad? The words tumbled out before I could stop them, but his face didn't soften. If anything, it hardened. You're uneducated trash, he said, each word sharp and deliberate, like he was cutting me out of the family one syllable at a time. Mom didn't even wait for him to finish. Get lost. You're a nobody, she snapped, her voice breaking only slightly as if even she knew she'd gone too far, but pride wouldn't let her take it back. The air between us was thick, heavy with years of silent judgments and unspoken rivalries. I could taste salt in the back of my throat, but not from tears, from holding back every truth I'd swallowed to keep this family together. I looked at the chipped linoleum beneath my shoes, tracing the cracks, letting their voices fade into a dull echo. My mind drifted to the truth they didn't know, the life I'd built when they weren't watching. No diplomas on my wall? Maybe. But in my bank account, $60 million. Every cent earned quietly, deliberately, away from their eyes, away from their pity. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I just nodded and walked toward the door. The winter air outside bit into my skin, but it was nothing compared to the cold I felt in that living room. I stepped into my car, the hum of the engine drowning out the muffled sound of Mom's voice calling after me, not to stop me but to make sure the neighbors knew she was right. I drove in silence, the city lights blurring past. In the rearview mirror, I saw the shadow of their front porch grow smaller, until it disappeared entirely. By the time I reached the edge of town, I had already decided. Tomorrow I wouldn't just leave. I'd vanish. Into a world they never believed I could touch, let alone own. As the waves crashed outside my window that night, I stared at the horizon and whispered to myself, they'll see soon enough. The sun broke over the Atlantic in a ribbon of gold, the kind of morning that made you believe the world still held secrets. I stood barefoot on the balcony of my Florida beachfront mansion, the salt air curling through my hair, the ocean's rhythm replacing the chaos I'd walked away from just 12 hours earlier. Below me, waves kissed the white sand and the glassy pool mirrored the rising sky. I could hear the muffled hum of the house staff downstairs, coffee brewing, breakfast being set, but I stayed still, letting the sound of the water drown out everything else. This was my sanctuary. My reward for years of keeping my head down while they mocked me. For every night I'd spent reading market charts while they told me I'd never make it. I turned my phone over in my hand, the screen lighting up with a flood of missed calls and messages. None from my parents. Of course not. They'd expect me to be sleeping in my car by now, maybe begging for help. Instead, I swiped through my private banking app, numbers only I knew existed, and smiled at the quiet proof of everything I'd built. Tech startups. Property flips. Investments in people smarter than me but too invisible for the world to see until I backed them. I had learned early, power isn't loud. It's silent, precise, and patient. After breakfast, I walked through the marble halls, fingers trailing over the cool stone walls. Every detail of this place, the Italian chandeliers, the hand-carved mahogany doors, had been chosen with intention. A home, yes, but also a statement. That afternoon I called my realtor. Have the movers bring everything from storage. I want the place fully set up within the week, I told her. My voice was calm, but inside I could already hear the ripple this would cause once they found out. The ocean breeze followed me as I settled onto the terrace, laptop open. A single headline on my screen caught my eye. A business acquisition I'd been working on for months had just gone public. My name wasn't on it, of course. I didn't need it to be. 3 weeks. That's all it would take. 3 weeks before my absence would become their obsession. 3 weeks before the silence broke. And when it did, it would not be me knocking on their door. It started with a single text from my cousin Mia. Where are you living now? I heard something crazy. I stared at the message, my coffee cooling in my hands. Crazy. That's how my family would describe anything they didn't understand. Anything that didn't fit their neat little box where I was the failure, the disappointment, the one who never measured up. I typed back 2 words, Florida coast. No smiley face. No explanation. Just enough to make her wonder. By that evening I could feel the shift, small ripples in the still water. My brother's fiancée liked a photo on my private Instagram. A neighbor from my parents' street sent me a friend request she'd never dared before. Then Dad called. I didn't answer. The next morning I sat at the edge of my infinity pool, letting the water lap against my legs while the housekeeper unpacked a crate of art pieces from storage. One of them, a large oil painting of a storm breaking over the sea, caught the light in a way that felt almost prophetic. Mia called this time. I picked up. They're saying you ran off to hide because you're broke, she said, her voice lowering like she was delivering forbidden news. I laughed softly. Broke people don't live where the ocean kisses their bedroom windows. There was a pause. So it's true, you bought a place out there? I didn't buy it, Mia. I built it. That silence. It was better than any applause. Later that night I opened the sliding glass doors of my master suite and listened to the waves. Somewhere in the distance, the low hum of a boat drifted across the water. I thought of my parents, probably sitting in their cramped living room, the air heavy with self-righteousness, and smiled. They wanted me gone? Fine. I was gone. But the absence they demanded was becoming the loudest presence in their lives. Because the thing about cutting someone off, you never know what they were holding back, until you feel the loss in your own hands. It wasn't my parents who showed up first. It was my brother. I spotted him from the balcony before the front gate even opened. Same swagger, same smirk he wore at every family gathering, the one that said he thought he was smarter than everyone in the room. The security guard buzzed my line. Ma'am, he says he's family. I leaned against the railing, the wind tangling my hair, and answered, let him wait. 10 minutes. When I finally walked down to meet him, he was leaning against his car, tapping his phone. Nice place, he said, glancing up with the casual arrogance of someone who thinks it could all be theirs if they asked nicely. What do you want, Adam? He shoved his hands in his pockets. Mom's worried. Well, you know, Dad. They just want to talk. I raised an eyebrow. Is that what this is? Concern? Or are you here to confirm the rumors so you can report back? He had the decency not to lie. Look, they're saying you lucked into something. Won a lottery or something. I told them that I couldn't possibly have earned it. I cut in. He shifted uncomfortably. Silence can be heavier than shouting, and I let it stretch until he started fidgeting with his keys. Finally, he said, they want to see you. I took a slow breath. No, Adam. They want to see what I have. His jaw tightened. For a moment I almost saw a flash of something real in his eyes. Not guilt but envy. And then it was gone. Before he left, he glanced at the mansion again, his gaze lingering on the terrace that overlooked the ocean. You should come back for dinner sometime, he muttered. I smiled, but there was nothing warm in it. Maybe. But next time tell them to come themselves. I'm done sending updates through a messenger. As his car disappeared down the drive, I turned back toward the house, the sun catching on the glass walls. I knew what was coming next. If Adam had seen this place, my parents wouldn't be far behind. The tide was shifting, and they had no idea how far out they'd drifted from shore. They didn't call first. They just arrived. I heard the crunch of tires on the gravel drive while I was in the kitchen, the rich smell of fresh coffee filling the air. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I caught a glimpse of Dad stepping out of the passenger seat, shoulders squared like he was walking into a fight he planned to win. Mom followed, sunglasses on, though the clouds outside made them unnecessary. She always wore them when she didn't want people to see her eyes. The doorbell chimed, a low, elegant tone that didn't belong to the life I'd left behind. I let it ring twice before opening the door. Dad's gaze swept the foyer. The marble, the glass, the light spilling in from the ocean. He didn't step inside. So it's true, he said. No hello. No how are you. Just an accusation disguised as a fact. Mom's voice was cooler. Adam wasn't lying. You really live here. I do, I said, leaning casually against the doorframe. Surprised. They exchanged a glance, and in that flicker of silence, I could feel the weight of all the years they'd measured my worth against their own standards. The diplomas I didn't have, the jobs they thought were beneath me, the life they assumed I'd never build. Where did you get the money? Dad asked finally, his tone sharp enough to slice the air. I met his eyes, steady. From not wasting my life proving myself to people who never believed in me. Mom stepped forward then, her voice softening just enough to be dangerous. We could work together. You could invest in the family business. Help us expand. There was not concern, not curiosity. Need. I glanced past them to the horizon, the waves rolling in. Funny, I said, when I needed family you told me to get lost. Now you're on my doorstep asking for help. Dad's jaw tightened. Mom's lips pressed into a thin line. Neither spoke. I think we're done here, I said finally and closed the door before they could answer. Their muffled voices faded as they walked back to the car. But I knew this wasn't the end. It was just the first crack in the dam. The calls started the next morning. Not the awkward, hesitant ones from before. These were relentless. First Mom, then Dad, then Adam, even Mia. Every voicemail was a new angle. We're still your family. You're being unfair. You owe us a conversation. By the fourth day they stopped pretending it was about reconciliation. Dad's voice hardened in one message. You can't just shut us out. We made you. We raised you. We have a right to be part of this. I played that one twice, not out of hurt but because it was almost impressive. The way he could twist history into something that made him the victim. Then came the email. It was from Mom, but I could feel Dad's fingerprints all over it. Long paragraphs about legacy, family pride, and the need to keep wealth within bloodlines. They weren't asking anymore. They were demanding. That evening I sat by the fire pit on my terrace, the ocean black and endless beyond the glass barrier. The flames flickered, reflecting off my wine glass, and I thought about every moment I'd swallowed my voice just to keep peace. I had built this life quietly, strategically, so I'd never have to stand on anyone's doorstep with my hands out. And now here they were metaphorically pounding on mine. The thing about tides, they always come in waves. And this one, I could feel it building. 3 weeks ago they thought I was nothing. Now they were circling like vultures. I closed my laptop, the final draft of a legal document still glowing on the screen. It wasn't addressed to them, not yet, but when the moment came it would end this dance for good. Because they hadn't just underestimated me. They'd forgotten something crucial. The girl they called a nobody learned how to make herself untouchable. They didn't wait for an invitation this time. They walked right through the front gates behind a delivery truck. Bold, entitled, certain I wouldn't turn them away with an audience. I was on the patio when I heard the heavy thud of the front door swinging open. My security detail had stepped aside. I'd given them orders not to physically stop my family but to watch. Always watch. Dad's voice was the first thing I heard. We're not leaving until you listen. I stayed seated, letting the silence work for me. The ocean roared behind me and I didn't turn my head when they came into view. Mom's sunglasses were off this time. Her eyes darted around the terrace. The infinity pool, the carved teak furniture, the glass railing that framed the horizon like a painting. Every detail seemed to add fuel to her expression. Do you think this is right? She demanded. Keeping us out of your life when you threw me out? I cut in, my voice calm but sharp enough to still her mid-step. Dad's jaw flexed. We were trying to push you to do better. By calling me trash? I tilted my head. By telling me I was a nobody? They didn't answer. The waves did. I rose slowly from my chair, the breeze catching my hair as I stepped closer. You didn't believe in me when I had nothing. You mocked me when I tried. And now that I have everything, suddenly it's ours. Mom glanced at Dad but he stayed rigid. This isn't just about money, he said finally. It's about family. No, I replied softly. Family doesn't demand proof you're worth loving. Family doesn't disappear when you fail, only to reappear when you succeed. Their silence stretched until it snapped. Dad's voice cracked just slightly. So this is it? I looked past them toward the security guard standing discreetly by the door. Please show my guests out. As they turned to leave, Mom's voice floated back, brittle and cold. You'll regret this. I almost smiled. Because in 24 hours, it wouldn't be me regretting anything. The next morning the ocean was calm, glassy, still as if the water itself was holding its breath. I sat in my study, sunlight spilling across the mahogany desk, a single envelope resting beside my coffee. It was addressed to my parents in my handwriting. No stamps. No courier. My assistant had placed it in their mailbox at dawn. Inside, a printed copy of the legal notice I'd been preparing for weeks. One paragraph stood out in bold. Effective immediately, all prior agreements, financial ties and obligations between myself and the recipients are null and void. Any attempt to use my name, likeness, or reputation for personal gain will be met with legal action. Beneath that, my signature. The same one now attached to companies they'd never even heard of, properties they'd never seen, investments they couldn't begin to understand. I knew exactly when they read it. At 10:43 a.m. my phone lit up. 3 missed calls from Mom, 2 from Dad, 1 from Adam. By 10:58, I received a single text from my cousin Mia. They're losing it. I closed my laptop and stepped out onto the terrace, the salty breeze lifting the edge of my robe. Below, the ocean stretched endlessly, each wave catching the light like polished steel. They had called me trash. A nobody. They had tried to make me small enough to fit inside the box they'd built for me. But I had built something else, something they couldn't touch. As I sipped my coffee, I felt no anger, no triumph. Just peace. Because the loudest revenge is silence. The kind that doesn't need to be announced, only felt. Far away, in that cramped living room where they once told me to get lost, they were holding a piece of paper that made it clear. I was gone. For good. And in the echo of that truth, I finally closed the door.